Hi, everybody. R. Scott Williams here. I wonder if anyone saw Julie Andrews in Victor Victoria. Not the movie. I know everybody saw Julie Andrews in Victor Victoria, the movie, but I'm wondering if anyone saw Julie Andrews in the Broadway production of Victor Victoria that came along years after the movie. I did not. A couple of nights ago, I was wandering through my bookcase because that's what we're doing these days. And I ran across this. Can you see it? This is the original Broadway cast production of the musical Victor Victoria. I must have run across it at a bookshop years and years ago, didn't even know it existed, so I bought it and then I put it on the bookshelf and forgot that I had it. I guess back then they would occasionally videotape ongoing, currently running Broadway productions, and then they would show it on Japanese television. I guess to invite the Japanese to come visit us. As far as I know, this is the only one that was ever commercially available in the United States. You go on YouTube, you can find some clips of Keith Carradine doing Will Rogers Follies. Oh, and I also ran across a really grainy clip of, get this, the original Broadway production of Pacific Overtures, 1976. Yeah. Of course, that takes place in Japan, but anyway, I don't think you can get any of those on DVD. I think this was the only one that was ever released. Well, I had never seen it, and so I unwrapped it and decided, well, I'll watch it. It took me 3 nights to get through this thing. Okay, I know that I'm talking about Mary friggin' Poppins here. I know, practically perfect in every way, but in this, Julie Andrews is lousy. She is so stagey and full of artifice and way overplaying to the audience. I mean, everything is out to the audience. 98.9% of everything she says and everything she sings is way out, spread out to the audience. And she's completely ignoring whoever she's on stage with, which she was on stage with some Broadway heavy hitters. She had Tony Roberts. She had Rachel York. Both of them were playing very flamboyant characters, but even as they were playing those flamboyant characters, they were at least trying to connect with each other, to tell this story in a natural, human kind of way. Oh, and Michael Nouri was doing that too. He was in the James Garner role. But Dame Julie, she was having none of it. She rarely even looked at whoever she was on stage with, even if it was a 2-person scene. So this thing was so mediocre that it got me wondering. I seem to remember that Victor Victoria, the film, was a pretty good movie. So what happened? So I did some research. Victor Victoria, the movie, was released in 1982, starring Julie Andrews, of course, and you probably know that it was directed by her husband, Blake Edwards, who also wrote it. And Blake Edwards was in the middle of a really lively career as a film director. Not only Victor Victoria, but he was also the man behind the Pink Panther series, and he discovered Bo Derek in 10, and his career reached all the way back to the early 60s and Days of Wine and Roses. So he had a lively career. He knew what he was doing. I just finished the 2nd volume of Julie Andrews' memoir, which covers what she calls her Hollywood years, which starts with Mary Poppins and then goes through for the next 10 or 12 years. Which she made a lot of movies during that period, and she was married to Blake Edwards during that period. And according to this memoir, that marriage was a lot more complicated than it looked like from the outside. He was a serial philanderer, and also he was mentally ill. Yeah, he had mental problems, and she spent all those years sort of on a tightrope trying to keep him healthy and keep him sane and keep him happy and getting him whatever he needed and whatever he wanted. And after Victor Victoria was such a big hit at the box office, what he really wanted was to turn it into a Broadway musical starring his wife and directed by him. Blake Edwards had never directed a play of anything. So obviously he had never directed on Broadway, and he certainly had never turned a screen musical into something that people would want to watch on the stage. Now, I happen to think that screen to stage translation is even more difficult than a stage to screen translation, but neither one of them is a picnic. And Blake Edwards did not have any idea what to expand and what to eliminate from the screen version to put it on to a stage where maybe people would want to watch it. And apparently, I'm not the only one who had that opinion, because you might remember the year that Victor Victoria was on Broadway, when the Tony nominations came out, this huge, high profile new American musical got one nomination. And it was for Julie Andrews. So, all of the music, all of the design elements, all of her co stars, and most importantly to Julie, her director, her husband, totally snubbed. Well, she was so disturbed by this that she removed herself from the competition. She refused the nomination. This was taped mostly on opening night in New York, so it was very early in the run. But Julie Andrews ran in Victor Victoria for over a year, 8 shows a week. I did the math. In 1982, when Victor Victoria was in the movie theaters, Julie Andrews was 47. It took 13 years for this thing to get to Broadway. So on opening night in 1995, she was 60, doing 8 shows a week. She looked tired. She looked like she might be in pain. She was having trouble with the music that was written for her. So after over a year, you already know that she had all those vocal problems, so she went to the doctor, who sent her to the surgeon, who gave her the surgery that he botched, and from then on we have been robbed of hearing Julie Andrews sing live. And she was robbed too. She sacrificed a lot doing this show so that her husband could direct on Broadway. So she deserves a little something. We can forgive her for Victor Victoria. We can forgive her for Sound of Music, too. Okay, that was a joke. I like The Sound of Music. It's a good movie. Actually, I think it's a good illustration of stage to screen. I think it's one of the success stories of that genre. And I've watched it twice, all the way through, since they released it in 1965. Okay, come on. You guys who love The Sound of Music, that's okay. Yes, I know. You loved it as a kid. You watched it every year. Now your kids watch it every day. Yeah. Sis boom ba. Do re mi. But, come on. The Sound of Music. There's nothing more alarming than a nun with a guitar.